Hi, this is a quick introduction to setting up a Premiere Pro project and getting some footage inside. So my Premiere Pro dialog box has popped up when I've started it, and it's allowing me to pick either open a project, obviously set up a new project, get some help, or I can, hopefully it's picking out where my recent projects were. It's usually looking in the scratch disk that I've set up, and I'll show you where that is in a second. In this case, what I want is a new project, so chances are you'll be the same. And when we click that, there's in this case, this is more about capture format, so we don't have to worry about some of these settings. What we're really looking for is, one, giving our project a name. Try to give it something that relates to what you're working on. In this case, I'm working on some footage called Team Story, so I'll call it that. And also notice it's got a location where it's saving the file to. So if you want to change that, click the browse button, select somewhere else. I'll cancel that because I'm going to keep it where it is, which is on my desktop and in a folder called Premiere Scratch. So I've set that up. So every time I start a project, I don't change it. I just give it a new name and save it. But if you're working on a network computer or something like that, that may not be the case. But either way, select. You may need to pick your own location because it will kind of reset every time somebody logs in or out. If I quickly click the Scratch Disk tab, let's just have a quick look. You'll notice that all the Scratch drives are set to be the same as a project. So in other words, again, they'll be inside my Premiere Scratch folder that I saved my project into. So it's the same as the project. A Scratch drive is basically a drive where the software needs to save any kind of video or audio files to while you're working. So let's have a look at what kind it's doing here. With the captured audio video, what it really is describing is well, I guess the best example would be like tape-based media. So we don't really work on that anymore, but tape-based cameras would need to you would need to capture that off the camera. So play off the camera or a other device, and while the tape's playing, the editor would actually capture that input signal. So that's what that would be for. So taking something off an SD card is not the same thing as a capture, so that doesn't really apply, as in, yes, of course it's in the Scratch disk, but chances are, unless you're working off tape-based media, you're not really going to be bringing anything in that way. However, you can see video and audio previews are also in the Scratch, so that may be where you're working on, say, something a little bit more complex, possibly, on the video. That's one example. And what happens is the so picture-in-picture, or where you're playing multiple videos at the same time on the screen, or maybe slowing it down or something like that, and the computer can't really sort of show you a live preview of that, so it generates so you may generate a new version of that video which is stored in your Scratch disk, and then whenever you want to play it back on in your editor, you're actually watching that video rather than it generating a live preview. And that's again going into your Scratch drive. So that's kind of what a Scratch disk is for. And like I said, in most cases, just leaving it set up the same as your project file will do. So in this case, we're going to click OK and start it up. Now, depending on which version you're running, I'm running a slightly older version than what's available right now. So I'm running CS6. So it's asking me about my sequence. So a sequence is your timeline. And here you get to pick what settings, video and audio settings you want. Now, on the newer version, it doesn't do that. It doesn't ask anymore. And I would say, even with the older version that I'm running that does ask, I'd normally just click cancel and not set up a sequence preset at this point in time. And I'll kind of show you how you can just set one up later. So once we're in, we've got 4 main panels, okay? And just to quickly describe those, you have a project panel where all your project files are stored. So anything you import in, you should be able to see from here. Obviously, there's a few other tabs within that, but right now we're just focusing on that one. Then you have a source video monitor, which allows you to play back any audio or video that you've brought in. So once all your files are in and they're stored in here, you should be able to play them back in this monitor. And on your right, you have a timeline, which is where you start to take all those individual clips and put them together in some particular order. So you can view it back as a overall story, hopefully. And here we have another monitor, which allows you to view back your timeline. So you get to see these clips as they've been cut together. So the monitor on the left, your source monitor, is for the clips that you've imported in, and the one on the right is to view back the clips that you're cutting together in your timeline. So let's start by just bringing our footage in. And in Premiere you can go File, Import, or you can just double click in the project panel and it should open up an import dialog box. And what I'll do is I will go to editing, which is where it is, and there's my files in a folder called Team Story. Now I can select individual files and bring them in one at a time if I only want some. I can also hold my command key down if I'm on a Mac and select a set of files, or control key if I was on a PC. But what I'll do instead is just click on the folder and click import, and that should bring in the whole folder instead. Which is a lot more useful to me. Now, if sometimes what may happen is if you bring in a folder directly off a camera, so straight off your SD card, there may be other stuff in there that the editor can't import, so it may not just contain audio video files, whether that be some form of metadata or any additional files that camera has put in there. So you may get a little dialog box that just says there were so many files that you imported, it was only able to bring in a certain amount. But a lot of times it will bring in all the audio and video, and chances are it's just referring to some other data possibly that was in that folder. And oops, I double clicked it again then. So I've got my now, while I say it's a folder, in an editor they're normally called bins, because bins were kind of used to organize film back in sort of more of the analog days. So you would have sort of large bins that would store different sets of films. So that's kind of the name this takes off. In fact, you'll see that a lot within editors, even things like your sort of razor tool, because razors were used to slice film and then in order to cut bits together. So a lot of these tools are kind of, or their terms are based on sort of analog processes. But yeah, you'll see it's called a bin. And inside that, like I said, I've got my files. Now, let's have a quick look at really import a project panel today, so all the stuff we've imported. Now, you may find that you got two different views, and a lot of times I've found Premiere by default is set to icon view, which looks a bit more like that. So you'll see a larger icon, and if you double click that, it'll open up another panel which will show you all your clips, and you can just point your mouse over any one, and just as you move your mouse over the clip, you can see what's actually happening in that shot. Whether the mouse goes back and forward, the clip sort of moves the same. So it's quite useful just to get a good idea of what's going on, and you should hopefully be able to click, and you can see you could rename those clips if you needed to, which would be quite helpful again. Because I'd say as an editor, the first thing you want to do is organize your footage. Okay, so there's no point having clips that are all just named after a number, which is usually what a lot of cameras do. It would be very difficult to tell what you're actually working with. So it can be quite helpful to, as an editor, to start off by just organizing the material you have. So if you've shot, say, things on 2 separate days, maybe you shot an interview on one day and cutaways on another, I would store those in 2 separate bins. One for the interview, one for the cutaways, and I might even have additional bins for different types of cutaways. Because again, like I said, it just makes it that much easier. As an editor, you want to be able to find clips very quickly. You don't want to be wasting time looking for material that you know is there, but you're just not sure where. So like I said, so you could use this view if you wanted to just kind of scrub through quickly, have a look, and rename clips. Now, renaming them here will only rename them in the editor. The original files on the computer will still be named exactly the same, but the software understands that, okay, you know, if you rename something here, it links to that same file. So like I said, so you can do that if you wish, and I find that usually works a lot better. And you can see that that's exactly what's happened with all of these clips. And you know, they're describing, so they're not called interview 1, interview 2 or something like that, but they sort of say who it's with. They say what kind of shot it is, so race start low angle, race start wide. And so you may want to think about doing something similar. You know, your naming terminology should hopefully like to make it obvious exactly what's in that clip. And going on to that, so if I close that down, I generally prefer to work in list view rather than the icon view, because list view allows me to see a lot more clips. I don't have to open up a second panel, which is kind of what happens if you're in the icon view. When you double click, it opens up this new panel, which is just taking up space. So in the icon view, sorry, in the list view, I can just click the disclosure triangle, and I can see all my files there. And seeing as they've all been named, it's quite easy to know exactly what I'm working with. And you see slightly different icons. You've got one which just has an audio waveform, which means it's just an audio file. Some that have both audio and video strips. And if you've got just a video clip, you would just have that video strip as an icon as well. But the other thing I like about list view is it allows me to sort of scrub through here, and I can, I say scrub through, well, kind of just move this little slider at the bottom through, and I can get some information about what I'm working with. So the footage I've got is 29.97 frames per second, which means it's American. And if we go through, I've got things like the media duration. So we've got frames, seconds, minutes and hours. Obviously, you'll find with the audio files, they have a slightly different way to record that actual frame information there, but apart from that, you still have the same, which is seconds, minutes and hours. But if you're just looking at the video clips, like I said, you'll find they're all uniform and they have that. So we can very quickly tell how long shots are as well. And like I said, we know what frame rate they're running on, so we know that they're all hopefully the same there. We can see that. And let's see what other information. We've got a whole variety of things. I've got information about the actual frame size, which here you can see in this example is only 720 by 480 pixels, and that's because it's a standard definition NTSC clip or clips. And we can find out a bit about the audio that's recorded within it. But as well as that, we've got a description box, so if I needed to, I could add an additional description or any other kind of log note about that clip. But I also have things like a good column. So by the way, columns can be sort of moved around. They don't have to stay just there. So I can move that good column right to the very front if I wanted to. Okay, so it's like the very first column that you see. You can see you've even got labels, so you can change the color and so on of certain ones, because you can organize these, by the way. Right now they're being organized by name, but you can click and organize them by any column that you like. Just got to click on its head. So for example, let's say I go through these clips, so let's have a look at that tied in with the source monitor. If we double click that, you can see here we are, source monitor plays that. I can view the clip, and then I say, okay, that's a good clip, might choose to use that later, that works. And then we kind of go through, biker down. Okay, looks like somebody didn't white balance there, so maybe we won't use that one. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, looks great. So we kind of tick that. Yeah, that one's fine. And once we've kind of done that, let's tick that one there. Again, we could do things like, let's organize them by the good clips first. So yeah, I'm not saying you have to do that, but I'm just showing you how, as an editor, you can choose. You've got multiple ways to kind of organize material. I'll go back to organizing it by name, and in fact, even the biker down one that has an issue there, that's fixable. So it wouldn't really be that problematic. I wouldn't skip that clip just for that reason. But like I said, that's the first thing you should do as an editor. Go in, look at the footage and organize it. Now, like I said, a lot of this is already done here. However, as an editor, what you would still do is go through each clip, okay? Even if it's just quickly scrubbing through, whether you do it here or you do it in the icon view, okay? Because your job as an editor is to know what you're working with before you can really put it together, okay? So as an editor, you've kind of got an idea of everything you have, and then you're kind of forming a story perhaps in your mind first before you actually put it on, before you actually do it physically on the computer itself. So just bear that in mind. So really, you should be, my mistake there, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. So you should just be going through, decide so which clips you want to use, and so on and so forth. Okay, so give that a go, have a look through, see what kind of material you're working with, and we'll get on to then actually doing the edit.